Carmel Beach near Monterey in California. As the autumn day draws to its close and the surfers seek one final wave, a tall, lean figure takes his regular evening run along the shore. He remains unnoticed, although he is, in fact, the most popular movie star in the world.
My dreams, and while you're listening to me, I suddenly see them come true. I can see us on an April night, looking out across a road, having supper in the candlelight, walking later, arm in arm. Then I'll tell you how I passed the day, thinking maybe how the night would be. Then I'll try to find the words to say all the things you mean to me.
Oh, there are various orphans that have been brought to us throughout the year. This one we think was deserted because he's very small for his age. He's already getting horns coming through. Well, they eat grain and they eat milk out of... They were eating out of a bottle for a while. Now they just drink milk out of a bowl. And of course this guy, he likes to get in the middle of every shot. Fred Bassett. Sydney's his name. You want some hay?
Home for Clint Eastwood is a remote and rocky peninsula overlooking the Pacific, inhabited by his daughter Allison, age 3, his 8-year-old son Kyle, and the lady he married 25 years ago, Maggie. He closely guards the privacy of his family, and he doesn't much like his house to be filmed. There's an ever-increasing danger of burglary and even kidnapping, for Eastwood is a very rich man. It's estimated he can now earn up to $10 million from every film he chooses to make. He's invested his money in large slabs of California, and in the nearby town of Carmel, he's often to be found at the restaurant he owns. It's called the Hog's Breath Inn.
You know, it looks kind of like a British pub to me, and I used to love the names they put on pubs over there. I thought it was had a terrific atmosphere, so I just figured we'd get a name that was a little more outrageous than some of the names they used.
The menu reminds his customers of some of their hosts' better-known films, like Dirty Harry and Fistful of Dollars.
That was all by a former partner. He was a sort of a PR-oriented type guy, and he thought up all these things, a Dirty Harry dinner or something like that. I was a little bit reticent about, but nobody seems to have objected to it. So.
But in addition to wealth and fame, he has of late accumulated another commodity, controversy. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker is one of America's leading film critics.
It almost seems like the hero as a psychopathic personality, because his affectlessness as when he kills begins to seem like an expression of a new nihilism. And I find it very displeasing. He's very unlike the John Wayne character, who stood for the right, who was a man of principle. Clint Eastwood seems almost now a machine for killing.
I talked to Eastwood in his back garden, and before we got on to Miss Kael's criticisms, he told me a bit about his early days.
I was raised during a Depression era in this country, and it was... I never saw my father with a specific profession, and so I never really was raised with an idea of you grow up thinking, well, you want to be a physician or you want to be anything, a druggist, whatever, and follow through with it. I just kind of became interested in this at a certain time when the chips all fell that way. I once did a play as part of an English project, a one-act play, when I was in junior high school. I hated it at the time. I mean, I enjoyed doing it. We were kind of a hit, but I was such a nervous wreck. I was ready to cut school. I just didn't figure that was my bag. The part of the lead in the play was an introverted kid, and I was an introverted kid, so my teacher picked me for the job, figuring that I'd just act myself. Well, we got through it, but I made up my mind then I'd never get involved with anything to do with acting again.
The United States government solved his career problems. He was drafted into the army. But unlike most conscripts then, he didn't get sent to Korea.
I was lucky. I think about 99% of the company I was with did, but I had been into swimming as a kid. My father was a very good swimmer, and I was a good swimmer and swam in school. And he, when I got into service, I just happened to hear a rumor that they needed somebody down at the pool area to teach swimming. So I ran down there and did a bit of a selling job on this captain in command, and I told them I was much better than I was, of course, and which later becomes the actor's lament, because the actors are always doing that. Later on, you're always saying, "Can you ride? Yes." "Can you ride motorcycles? Yes." "Can you drive off cliffs?" Yeah, you say anything because you want the part. So, but this was much like that. I went down there, and I liked the area. I figured I'd like to stay in that kind of work. So I got a job teaching swimming for 2 years.
But then, I mean, to make the decision to go for an audition at Universal, you must have wanted to be an actor. When did that occur? Was it the fact you knew David Jansen and people in the army?
Yeah, I knew those guys. I tell you, they all seemed to enjoy themselves. It seemed like a long shot type of thing, and I was always kind of for that. So
people telling you you're a good-looking fellow, you should be an actor.
The what?
Were people telling you you look like an actor, therefore you should be one?
I don't think they were telling me that. I don't know what they were. I don't know. I don't recall anybody telling me that. They might have on the way, but I'm sure they told that to tell that to anybody. Maybe the captain of the football team or something like that.
But Universal accepted him, and The Revenge of the Creature provided him with his first big break.
Oh, I just had a stupid scene. I had to come in as a lab assistant. I played a lot of lab assistants in those days, and I came in and I couldn't find some white mice that were missing in the lab, so all of a sudden the guy says, "Well, did you look everywhere?" And I reached a pocket, and oops, there it is. There's a white mouse. It was pretty dumb stuff, but I guess they were short on time and just wanted to pad the script. Doc, would you come here a minute? Didn't you say that among the lower animals there were no natural enemies as long as they were well fed?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, maybe so, Doc, but there were 4 rats in there when I changed my lights. Now there's only 3. It's my considered opinion that rat number 4 is sitting inside that cat.
Are you sure you fed them all this morning?
Sure, I always feed them. How'd you get in here? Well, another biggie that I was in was the second film I did was a film called Tarantula. And that I played the part of the jet pilot who came in and bombed this giant tarantula at the end. And I was enthusiastic when I read the part, because I was enthusiastic about doing anything that would increase my experience. But I had goggles on and a mask on here and a helmet on, so it could have been just somebody sitting there and somebody just dubbed in the words.
Dropping napalm. Follow an order. Here goes.
And you always hope for a small part in those things. I guess in the time I was there, 2 years, that I did about 14 or 13 bits of anything from walking on to saying 1 line to saying 3 or 4 lines. I'll never forget I was a lab assistant once with Rock Hudson, and I had a 4-line part where he comes in and asks me some question, and I'm working in an X-ray lab, and he's the physician. And they told me they wanted me to wear glasses. Well, I'd never worn glasses before, and I was disappointed because I didn't think that I looked particularly good in them. But the director wanted me to wear them because I was a youthful kid, and he figured it would give me a little more of an intellectual look, or physician's assistant look, if there is such a thing. So I scouted around. I tried on about 10 pairs of glasses. Finally found a pair that really looked pretty good. I sat there looking at myself in the mirror. Finally, I got used to it. I thought, hey, this isn't bad at all. This may be a whole different approach. So I went on the set with these glasses. Everything was fine. I got in the scene. Rock Hudson walks in. He starts to say his line. He looks at me, and he turned to the director, and he says, "Where are my glasses?" And the director said, well, you're the leading man, and you don't need glasses, you don't wear them, so I think I ought to wear. So he went through all the 10 pairs of glasses that I'd tried on, didn't find them. They took mine off, fit him perfect, okay, boom. He wore them, I didn't.
Well, these look pretty good, Harry. What is it, Will?
Telephone, Dr. Parker.
All right. Should study these when they're dry. Harry, I'll call you tomorrow from Chicago to see if they answer our question.
Good luck with your speech, sir.
Oh, thank you, Will. I'll need it. As a public speaker, I should stick to orthopedic research.
In those days, they used to have a guy who looked like all their current guys, and I didn't look like anybody who was a current contract star, to use that word. So they finally dumped me, figuring I wasn't headed anywhere.
Get him up! Move him out!
But in January 1959, he was headed somewhere, to Sedalia with 2,000 head of cattle, as Rowdy Yates in the CBS series Rawhide.
Here, you can have this wish, Mush. What was the matter with it? Nothing, I didn't taste it. Well, next time you don't want food, don't draw any. I ain't cooking for waste. Get off me, Wishbone. I don't want to argue with you this morning. No? Well, what's the matter? Don't you feel good? Matter of fact, my head feels like someone's chopping wood on top of it.
Somebody conk you on the head?
Well, the pain is more or less milling around inside. I didn't sleep at all last night, you know. Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? Wait a second now. Nothing in the bottle's gonna fix me up. Come on, swallow it.
A lot of people, as soon as they get to be in a series that's a success, they can't wait to get out of it, and they think they're going to go on to bigger and better things, and maybe that might be the case. But for me, I wanted to just learn as much as I could about film, and after 7.5 or 8 years, you do a couple hundred hours of the show, you can pick up a lot on it.
It's nothing, Mr. Faber. I'm a little dizzy.
Yeah, sure.
I must have got too much dust.
Easy, boy.
I'll get back to my turn.
No, you won't. Get on back to the supply wagon.
Mr. Faber.
You heard me.
I was doing Rawhide, and I was coming to a hiatus. Took 3 months off, usually around February, March, and April of every year. And my agent in Los Angeles called me up in the William Morris office and asked me if I would like to go to Europe and make an Italian, German, Spanish co-production of a remake of a Japanese film in the plains of Spain, and I said not particularly.
And Sergio Leone, the director of A Fistful of Dollars, hadn't particularly wanted Clint Eastwood. Not to begin with, at any rate. He wanted another actor.
James Coburn.
I really wanted James Coburn, but he was too expensive.
Dico James Coburn che non ho potuto avere.
The Italian cinema is very poor.
Erano talmente poveri che non si potevano permettere.
We got Clint for $15,000. Coburn wanted $25,000.
Ma io non ho visto un carattere
I
in
didn't see any
Rawhide.
character in Rawhide, only a physical figure.
Solamente una figura fisica. E la cosa che
What struck me most about Clint was his indolent way of moving.
Indolenza nel muoversi.
It seemed to me
Clint
Clint
secondo
closely
me
resembled a cat.
assomiglia molto da vicino a un gatto.
The heart, Ramon. Don't forget the heart. Aim for the heart or you'll never stop me.
The script was in English, very strange English, because it had been written by an Italian group of people who didn't speak English that well, especially English with what you'd call the Western kind of slang. It was like an Italian concept of what a Western slang would be. So that a lot of the dialogue was a little bit on the shaky side. So I liked it, though, and I felt that maybe a European approach would give the Western a new flavor. Something, because I thought it had been in a very stagnant period at that point. The part wasn't as spare as that in the script, but to me, the more the character would get into expository scenes and start explaining things, the more it would dissipate the mystery of the character or the strength of the character. So we cut it down very lean, and Sergio Leone agreed that we'd try to make this guy a little bit unique. You're not quite sure who he is. You're not even quite sure he's the hero until 3/4 or halfway through the film.
Che il più grande scrittore western è stato e sarà sempre Omero.
The greatest scriptwriter of westerns was Homer. The archetypes of yesterday's cowboys were Achilles, Ajax, Agamemnon, and Hector.
Achille, Aiace, Agamennone, Ettore.
My idea was to bring back the Italian commedia dell'arte.
Il genere alla commedia dell'arte italiana.
But more than the Commedia dell'arte, or indeed Homer, Sergio Leone owed a greater debt to the Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. Leone bought the rights to his film Yojimbo and based A Fistful of Dollars on it. He deliberately wanted James Coburn to play the Toshiro Mifune part. Coburn had already been in The Magnificent Seven, which was a Western remake of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Leone's first spaghetti western was extremely faithful to Yojimbo. The technique of following the protagonist's back with the camera, the atmospheric long shots, the music, the deliberately slow pace interrupted with fast bursts of action. Even the central character came from the Japanese film, for in Yojimbo, Toshiro Mifune originated The Stranger with No Name.
My son Yoichiro, my wife Orin, my four strongest men, Magotara, Yahachi, Matsukichi, and Tsukeyo. Oh, by the way, what's your name?
Me?
And quite apart from the characters and techniques, the similarities between Yojimbo and A Fistful of Dollars were remarkably close.
Get 3 coffins ready.
Huh?
Listen, stranger. Didn't you get the idea? We don't like to see bad boys like you in town. Go get your mule. You let him get away from you?
See, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him.
まったくバカにつける薬はねえな。何？
Cooper, 2 coffins. No, maybe 3.
My mistake. 4 coffins.
They definitely had this satiric undertone because, I mean, that was just in the script. That's the way it was. That's the way Yojimbo was. That's the way the original Japanese film was.
So when you say satiric, what is the satire on?
Well, it's probably a little bit of a satire of the hero itself. The fact that he is only out for his own gain. Hence the title For a Fistful of Dollars. He doesn't seem to be interested in anything else except his own monetary gain.
Rubio, get the men. You are well informed.
A man's life in these parts often depends on a mere scrap of information. Your brother's own words.
Tell me, why are you doing this for us?
$500?
The typical Western done for many years was a hero rides into town, sees schoolmarm on the porch of the school, sees man beating horse. He interferes, hits man who's beating horse, And Schoolmarm looks, and you know darn well what's going to happen at the end. You know, two people are going to get together, and it isn't the guy and the horse, you know. So that's kind of your typical Western story. This one, man rides in on a 35-year-old horse, very shabby looking. He sees man kicking kid. Sees woman obviously in a distraught position at the house, obviously a prisoner of sorts, and he turns and rides off. I mean, isn't it? Later on, he helps that woman and kid out, but right away you say, now wait a minute, this has got to be something strange. This can't be the hero. He doesn't have a white hat, and he's not doing the normal things. To me, this is what made it interesting: is you couldn't predict the end of the film, and but in some of the positions we were getting into for years, you could pretty well predict the story.
The spaghetti westerns were made not in Italy, but here in Almeria in the south of Spain, with German money, an American star, a mixed crew including Spanish technicians, and at the helm, an Italian director.
Well, communication was a little rough. I knew arrivederci and buongiorno, and he knew goodbye and hello, and that was it. We had an interpreter the first time. Then he learned a little English, and I learned a little Italian, and between a little Spanish, and we just kind of fudged our way along.
Io penso che la caratteristica dei miei film sia
My films are basically silent films. The dialogue just adds some wit.
Il dialogo ha solamente un valore e ha un senso aforistico.
Again, working with Leone, I read an interview once with Eli Wallach, who'd come and work with you in one of the subsequent films, and he was saying that you had to do some hazardous stunts.
Oh, yeah. I remember they were going to blow up a 200-meter bridge, and they had something like 1,800 pounds of dynamite or so. They had just tons of dynamite in the thing. And I said to Sergio, I said, where are we going to be? They had 5 cameras on. And he says, well, you'll be down here next to this first camera. You'll crawl up here, and then just as you come over the top where the camera is, the bridge will blow up behind you. And I looked at the bridge, and I looked at the distance between it, and I said, I knew it was close. I thought it was very close, too close. But I said, rather than say, no, I don't want to do that, I said, Sergio, where are you going to be? And he said, oh. He says, well, I'll be right here, and right behind this camera, waiting for you, right where you come in. I said, fine. If you'll be there, I said, then I'll do it. He kind of did a long look at me. And all of a sudden, I took a walk back, and I saw 2 guys coming up in Wallach's wardrobe and my wardrobe. And I said, oh, you're going to use doubles. Why is that? Well, Sergio's decided he wants to be up on the hill so he can get a better look. So anyway, that's kind of the way it was. And sure enough, when the bridge did blow up, it sent, which it blew up prematurely too, which is another story. It's the old anytime you're ready CB joke. But anyway, when they finally blew the bridge up, rocks, stones were coming out of the bridge, came up right, almost killed the assistant cameraman right on the lower camera where we would have been standing.
My bridges tend to blow up.
Quite apart from the hazards occasioned to the star of the spaghetti westerns, many critics were worried about the violence he visited on his victims.
Hello?
Gilles Powell writes about films for the Sunday Times.
I didn't care for them because I have a strong prejudice in favour of the American Western, and I didn't care for this translation of a native American thing to a European country, and I found their violence was a kind of exploitation of violence. But somehow, through them all, he really made their success in a way. This quiet, not very talkative figure, a man with no name, riding quietly through, suffering terrible things. But I think he was quite already remarkable and perhaps wasn't sufficiently recognized.
Well, I think he does express a new mood in movies, and certainly he expresses a new mood in American life. Let me see if I can put it this way. The Bogart hero felt pain. When he killed someone, he suffered from it, and he was a man of experience. You saw the lines of pain on his face. The Eastwood character does express, well, how can I put it? A new emotionlessness about killing that people feel is the truth now. It used to be that the man who stood for high principles was the man who was also the best shot. Now we no longer believe that in order to be a great shot you need principles at all. And Clint Eastwood is a totally unprincipled killer.
Are you ever appalled by violence in films that you see? You quote
If it
Taxi
doesn't
Driver.
suit the situation, I'm appalled by violence in films, but if it suits the situation, you have to tell the drama. And the basis of drama is conflict. And sometimes some films, a certain amount of violence is justified, and some films none is justified. It depends on the story completely. I think after we did Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More and the Italian spaghetti westerns, as you were calling them, there was 100 films that came out that were twice as violent, but they didn't do as well. So you can't say that violence is what sells the picture. It isn't.
10 years after being dropped by Universal Studios, Eastwood returned to Hollywood as a star, greatly in demand to play either in character, as a fast-shooting soldier in Where Eagles Dare, or out of character, as a love-struck gold prospector in Paint Your Wagon.
I talk to the trees, but they don't listen to me.
But being a star wasn't enough. He felt impotent and powerless as the cost of the picture spiraled out of control.
But they never hear me.
It wasn't the most smooth-running picture I've ever been on, and for that reason I think I started my own company and figured I'd try some other approaches at production.
Because you wanted total control of what you were doing?
Well, I wanted control. I saw that film in 4 different versions: the director's version, the producer's version, and then the coalition of all the studio execs and their version, and all the versions. The director's version, the first one, was actually the best one, but that wasn't the one that was released.
So, with a friend who'd been an accountant at Universal, Robert Daly, he formed his own company, Malpaiso Productions, with their headquarters in Warner Brothers Burbank Studios. And for the past 7 years, Eastwood has owned every film he's made.
The thing about Clint that takes him above other stars who are in the same rank as he is that he's never stopped learning this business. Now, I know when he was going on Rawhide for 7.5 years, the tendency after you've been on a show for a long time is to sit in your dressing room, to take it easy, to do what is easiest, to get a little bit lazy, because you get bored. But he was always on the set, always observing. They had different directors in every show, watching everything that went on, constantly asking questions for 7.5 years. And so he's extremely knowledgeable about the business. And one of the things I noticed, when he and I formed this company together, on the business aspects, he would ask me a question. And he'd never ask the question again, because once he'd heard the answer, he'd never forgot it. He learns very quickly. And I would say he's one of the top 2, 3, 4 directors in the business right now.
Don't you like me?
You're a very nice girl.
But who needs nice girls?
Eastwood made his debut as a director with the story of a disc jockey and a psychopathic girl. Play Misty for me.
And you don't want to complicate your life.
That's exactly right.
Well, neither do I. But that's no reason we shouldn't sleep together tonight if we feel like it.
It came as something of a surprise that the man who had made his reputation as a cold, emotionless killer should choose for his first film as director a mystic and romantic story. It certainly came as a surprise to the studio executives.
I hate to tell you the problems I had even getting the show made or started, because I had executives at Universal ask me why is Clint Eastwood, who wants to see Clint Eastwood play a disc jockey? And I said, who wants to see him play anything?
And the first time ever I lay.
But while Misty enjoyed a success in the art houses, the vast commercial audiences that followed Eastwood wanted to see him more in character, treating women maybe a little bit tougher. And in his second film as director, High Plains Drifter, he reverted to his less passionate self.
Why don't you watch where you're going? Oh, look at this, it's ruined.
There's no need for all that.
All what?
If you want to get acquainted, why don't you just say so?
Acquainted? Well, you'd be amusing if you weren't so pathetic. Just a minute. I'm not finished with you yet. You know, at a distance, you'd almost pass for a man. But you're certainly a disappointment up close, aren't you?
Your feet, ma'am, are almost as Big as your mouth.
You know what you are? Just trash. A bottle of whiskey for courage and the manners of a goat.
You're the one who could use a lesson in manners.
Well, not from you, whiskey breath. Let go of me! Let go!
It was similar to the technique of Leone, but to many critics, The Apprentice had outstripped The Sorcerer. His overall style wasn't based on that of any other director.
I liked Wellman for Oxbow, and I liked Ford for Quiet Man, and I liked just depend on the picture. I've never really been an aficionado of one particular guy. I've worked with a lot of directors over the years in television and so forth that were very knowledgeable, and I learned a lot from them. And I also worked with some that I didn't think were knowledgeable, and I learned a lot from them.
Eastwood got one of the best film editors in Hollywood to cut High Plains Drifter, Ferris Webster.
Well, I was under contract to John Sturges for 12 years, and at his peak, John has made some beautiful pictures, Bad Day at Black Rock and Magnificent Seven, Great Escape. But then there was a period of real, what do we call them, dogs. They were awful pictures. And Frankenheimer, I worked with John, I did 2 very good pictures with him. Manchurian Candidate and 7 Days in May. And then he went on a tear and for years, he made no good pictures. And they all seem to do that. Clint is the only consistent one. As I say, I really cannot tell you a bad picture he's made. I thought the first picture he directed, which I did not do, Play Misty, for me was a marvelous picture.
So you put Clint in a category along with Cukor and Frankenheimer and Sturges as a director?
Yeah, I put him above him, really, because I think he's a lot more down to earth.
Well, he knows his craft. I think that his greatest weakness lies in the stories that he does. I think if he had better stories, I think he'd be a better director. I have no fault to find with the way he moves his camera, etc.
Ho visto un western.
I saw High Plains Drifter. I didn't like it much.
Da lui che non mi è piaciuto affatto.
You dirty bastard! I'll kill you!
Wonder what took us so long to get mad.
Because maybe you didn't go back for more.
Chef, you know where to look?
In his most recent western, The Outlaw Josie Wales, Eastwood establishes a style very much his own. He starred in it and directed it. To some people, a lonely position.
Zoom in. A little ray of hope, man. You just can't believe it. Really tired, John. Really shot. Sheb, you can relax. Okay.
It's lonely in that sense, that you have to make the final decisions, but I'm fairly good at that. I'm fairly decisive at that. For better or for worse, or whether you agree with the end result or not, I'm not afraid to put down what I have in my mind. But you surround yourself with very good people, and so it isn't lonely in that aspect. I mean, I try to not only cast the actors that I use, but also to cast everybody that works with you, to make sure you have people who have good input. And I like to solicit input from everybody, and Siegel does the same thing. To me, an actor is involved with one component of the film, a very important component of the film, but the director is involved with every component of the film, and that's the difference. One is more or less total filmmaking as opposed to just one segment.
Yeah, okay. All ready? Yeah. You in the mood? Yeah.
Now, Chief, lean this way a little bit more.
We'll look out there, Chief, down there, past, just to the right of Lorraine. Yeah, okay. And,
in Josie Wales, he portrays the West with an affection and a realism far removed from the spaghetti westerns. He continues the mystic and romantic undertones of his earlier films, and for the first time, he reveals his most personal quality as a man, his humor.
Howdy.
Howdy.
I'm getting better at sneaking up on you like this. Only an Indian can do something like this.
That's what I figured.
You figured?
Only an Indian could do something like that.
you were offered a choice of Oscars, Oscar for Best Director or Oscar for Best Actor, which would you choose?
It's really a... I don't know. I never have thought in terms of Oscars because I've never been involved in the... I mean, I live away from town. I've never been in a political element, so to speak. I suppose the director, I think directing is much more gratifying.
He's an extremely mediocre director. He really doesn't know how to dramatize material. The sequences don't build. The films he directs feels very long because there's a static, dead feeling in them and a passionless quality to them.
I think he has complete control of the medium. Josie Wales seems to me to be beautifully conceived, splendidly controlled. The narrative moves in absolutely the right rhythm and the right direction. It doesn't wander off.
I think The Outlaw Josie Wales is perhaps an improvement.
Although as a director, Eastwood now commands worldwide respect, as an actor he's still relatively unacclaimed. Perhaps the legacy of Rawhide and the spaghetti westerns has blinded critics to any progress he may have made. He's relatively philosophical about it.
I suppose everybody'd like to see people in print say something flattering about him, but you've got to realize a lot of people didn't understand those films at that time, and a lot of people, the only people who seemed to understand him was the public. The public seemed to catch on to him right away. They seemed to enjoy him. Obviously, that was the reason they did well.
Just a waste of good support. Don't move, any of you. Lieutenant? No, I'd advise you not to, Colonel.
After playing the loner for so long, it wasn't easy for Eastwood to co-star.
Here, safe and sound, enjoying a drink. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Lieutenant, drop that gun.
What?
Drop that gun and sit down.
What the hell are you talking about?
Sit down.
In Where Eagles Dare, for instance, he and Richard Burton lacked the rapport of, say, Redford and Newman. It was more of a clash of styles.
Major, if I live to be 100.
Do nothing, Lieutenant. In your own idiom, you're a punk. And a pretty second-rate punk at that. I was fascinated to watch his particular kind of behavior and his movements. There's a certain line of American actors who are immensely different from British actors, and he is in the great line of, shall we say, Spencer Tracy or James Stewart or Bob Mitchum. They have a kind of dynamic lethargy. They appear to do nothing, and they do everything. And there's certainly Clint in this particular picture, the only time I've worked with him, and I hope that, of course, I will work with him again. Now that he's so fantastically important, then maybe he'll give me a job. It was very instructive, actually, to watch Clint move around these so-called classical actors, because he reduced everything to an absolute minimum. If he had, I remember, for instance, he had perhaps a 4-line speech, and he reduced it to 4 words. And it was enormously effective, much more effective than if he'd spoken the 4 lines. And I'm afraid he used me a bit in those days. He allowed me to do all the talking.
The script was a very strange script with lots of exposition. In fact, even the character I played had tremendous amounts of exposition. We'd stop and we'd talk for hours about what's going to happen. And the director and I felt that that was very impractical. And so we'd let Richard's character handle the exposition, and he has a beautiful speaking voice, and he's very good at that sort of thing. And I would handle the shooting, of which they felt I was very good at.
But prudently, since Where Eagles Dare, he's rejected multi-star pictures and done what he's best at, playing the loner like Inspector Harry Callahan, Dirty Harry, hero of Magnum Force and The Enforcer. Don Siegel directed the first one.
I found that he was very knowledgeable and vastly underrated as an actor. The hardest thing in the world is to do nothing, and he does it very well. He gives the impression that all the other actors are overacting.
acting isn't just rolling on the floor and screaming and yelling, though that's more sensational, much as when a tap dancer is crossing his hands like this and jumping up and down. It looks more sensational than when Fred Astaire is doing a very subtle step. Subtlety is often isn't as appreciated maybe as somebody breaking into tears and ranting and raving. It's just a lot of times people think you're not acting, but you cannot carry an audience for a couple hours with the film unless you're concentrated on what you're doing.
Well, I think he's barely an actor at all. That is, he has minimal resources, but that doesn't necessarily matter for a screen actor.
Too many players, actors and actresses, react too much, and I think the cinema hero, on the whole, should not react enormously. One can't, you know, the great players, Spencer Tracy, Gary Cooper, have not really shown enormous emotional reactions. And I think that it is one of his strong qualities that he presents this almost impassive figure who yet reacts in action.
Well, from one standpoint, looking at his bank account, I'd say he was brilliant.
But it isn't just Eastwood's acting that is a cause for criticism. Even the roles he chooses to play come under scrutiny, especially the maverick cop, Dirty Harry.
This is the .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. And it could blow your head clean off. Do you feel lucky?
You must realize that political attitudes are carried and very intentionally carried in some of these films. I mean, the John Wayne films and the Clint Eastwood films made during the Nixon era, and particularly the heyday of the Nixon era, were carrying the line for a political position in this country. And those pictures were very definitely shaped in those directions. It is not merely that these people express certain attitudes off screen. Their scripts are shaped in terms of what those stars believe.
I know what you're thinking, punk. You're thinking, did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Now, to tell you the truth, I forgot myself in all this excitement. But being this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and will blow your head clean off, you've got to ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I thought that his relish when he killed the man who stood for all liberal principles rolled into one, plus all evil rolled into one, you know, the man who was an absolutely maniac of a killer but wore a peace button, so that Dirty Harry stood for all the right-wing forces in American life. That relish that Eastwood showed about killing, I found offensive.
Because we're all appalled by violence, and all critics say how perfectly awful it is. But when violence is turned against violence, we all become extremely moral about it and say, oh no, we can't have some people taking the law into their own hands.
They're not a man who stands for violence. They're a man who can't understand that society tolerating violence and violence perpetrated against it. And when the first Dirty Harry came out, it was at a time when an awful lot of films had been done concerning the rights of the accused, and all of a sudden there came a film along where somebody was concerned with the victim and the rights of the victim and the comfort of the victim, and then so somebody called that fascist. Well, I don't think it's fascist. And he was just a man who didn't understand. He didn't understand. He says in the picture, he says, he has a scene with the district attorney where he says, well, if that's the law, if a man can be set out on the streets on a technicality like that, then the law is wrong.
You're lucky I'm not indicting you for assault with intent to commit murder.
What?
Where the hell does it say you've got a right to kick down doors, torture suspects, deny medical attention and legal counsel? Where have you been? What I'm saying is that man had rights.
Well, I'm all broken up about that man's rights.
You should be. I've got news for you, Callahan. As soon as he's well enough to leave the hospital, he walks.
What are you talking about?
He's free.
And you're letting him go?
We have to. We can't try him.
And why is that?
Because I'm not wasting $500,000 of the taxpayers' money on a trial we can't possibly win. The problem is we don't have any evidence.
Evidence? What the hell do you call that?
I call it nothing. Zero.
Are you trying to tell me that ballistic can't match the bullet up to this rifle?
It does not matter what ballistics can do. This rifle might make a nice souvenir, but it's inadmissible as evidence.
And who says that?
It's the law.
Well, then the law is crazy.
I think that is a kind of reflection of a feeling in society, that sometimes the law doesn't act firmly enough. I'm against it. I mean, morally one disapproves of any single person or single section of society acting as its own lawgiver.
We ourselves, Great Britain and the United States, have imposed our feelings on other people. After World War II, we went to Nuremberg and we tried members of the party in Germany. At that time, we tried them and convicted them for not adhering to a higher morality. Well, that's the way Dirty Harry is. He listens to a higher morality above the law, and he feels if the law is wrong, and he should fight that or try to solve it.
We're simply ridding society of killers that would be caught and sentenced anyway if our courts worked properly.
But even Harry was eclipsed in the sequel, Magnum Force, where he was confronted by a group of young policemen totally committed to upholding the law by violent, even ruthless means.
It's not just a question of whether or not to use violence. There simply is no other way, Inspector. You, of all people, should understand that. Either you're for us or you're against us.
I'm afraid you've misjudged me.
Anyone who threatens the security of the people will be executed. Evil for evil, Harry. Retribution.
That's just fine. How does murder fit in? You know, when police start becoming their own executioners, where's it gonna end, huh, Briggs? Pretty soon you start executing people for jaywalking and executing people for traffic violations. Then you end up executing your neighbor because his dog pisses on your lawn.
There isn't one man we've killed who didn't deserve what was coming to him.
Yes, there is. Charlie McCoy.
Now, what would you have done?
I'd have upheld the law.
What the hell do you know about the law? You're a great cop, Harry. You had a chance to join the team, but you'd rather stick with the system.
Briggs, I hate the goddamn system. But until someone comes along with some changes that make sense, I'll stick with it.
You're about to become extinct.
You have a worldwide image as this super cool, ruthless, occasionally violent, very often humorless man that you play in many of your films. How much is that like you?
I guess there's certain elements of me in every character you play, but not obviously I'm not those people, and I don't necessarily even believe like those people do, but I believe how they do for the moment. There are also a lot of humor involved in films that I've been involved in, and I like humor. I like to laugh. I like to watch people laugh.
Hi.
Oh, hi. What's your name?
Sunny. You know, I've been living here almost 6 months now. It's funny, I've never met you before.
Oh, well, I work a lot.
I know. You're the cop who lives upstairs.
That's right.
Mind if I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
What does a girl have to do to go to bed with you?
Try knocking on the door?
In the summer of 1976, Eastwood returned to the streets of San Francisco. He's completing the trio of Dirty Harry films. The final one's called The Enforcer. On the set, he's able to switch from the lethal and laconic detective to his usual sunny self with ease. His bonhomie is legendary among the production team.
Working in a parking lot gives you a lot of experience for that sort of thing. You just your normal San Francisco driver on Saturday night. driving his limousine back to the Villa Roma.
Although he chooses not to direct the picture, he owns it. He's appointed Jim Fargo, his assistant on Josie Wales, as director, but he still brings his power and his instinct to bear, especially when the script is too wordy.
See, the whole thing just goes on and on and on for stuff that doesn't...
Yeah.
The main thing is
I
he comes
agree.
back
We can
and he
dump
takes
all
the
this.
car.
What does he want? He wants a car. We'll give him one.
Yeah, this is kind of like the mini Uganda raid, see?
Most film stars know when they've delivered a line right. With his experience behind the camera, Eastwood knows how to time an action right.
Let me do one more. I anticipated that shot too much.
And for that reason, he very often does his own stunts. For the Eiger sanction, he went out and trained and learned to mountain climb in order to give the film authenticity. He came down to earth with a splash in Hang 'em High, and in Dirty Harry he leapt from a bridge onto a moving bus. Not a great feat of heroism, but enough to give the insurance company a few worries.
As an actor, you have genuinely done your own stunts. You did this amazing jump from the bridge in Dirty Harry. Why do you do that when there are stuntmen who are presumably paid to do so?
Excuse me, I gotta... Excuse me, just a little sneeze. Stunts always make me sneeze. Because we had the camera on the bus, and the only way to do it was to see, you leap right into the camera, they're going to know who it is. It just seems like if it's a logical stunt and it isn't ridiculous, something that is putting the whole company in jeopardy, why not?
In The Enforcer, the stuntman may be paid to fall through the skylight, but the star isn't. He approaches the prospect cautiously.
He just grazed the bed, he never really hit it.
Didn't he?
He got out so far. Yeah, he got out so far. How much further do you want to go?
Is he all right?
Yeah, he's all right.
Square it up. Where they're putting the camera.
This side here, I know, is going to follow him in. Kick it out before you go. I don't think
that'll go. I think that'll stay there, yeah.
Yeah. And it could hit him on the nog, and it's heavy. It really is heavy.
If I were going to jump through there, I'd kick that stuff out.
What I would do is forget this camera and shoot this shot later when you're down more and you can have me drop in with the pieces there. I'd rather not drop in on the pieces.
Those pieces there?
Yeah.
Well, let's not do it then.
But you can set another camera in here where you're down towards everything and we can just jump in next to it. Maybe a little lesser of the jump. Okay.
Got it?
Good. How are you feeling? You never really know how you're going to do those things until you do it.
God! Don't let him kill me! You want the goddamn car right now!
In The Enforcer, Eastwood confronts a gang who've robbed a liquor store and taken the staff hostage. They want a getaway car.
Mr. Do like he said.
This is my best sport jacket.
I said get your ass on the floor, you dirty son of a bitch. Spread eagle. Movement!
After putting up with the gang's threats and humiliations, Eastwood, or rather Inspector Harry Callahan, decides to carry out their wishes. To the letter.
Run, jive-ass bastard!
What do they want?
I want a car.
What are you going to do?
Give him one.
Everything is a figment of the imagination. It's the character you're telling at the moment. It's all fakery.
Do you shoot a gun, for instance? Go hunting or anything like that?
I don't hunt, but I target shoot a gun. Yeah, I have a gun range up in the valley on a piece of property that I own, and I go out there and shoot now and then.
What about relaxing? What do you do to relax?
Well, what I do to relax normally is just come here. I normally don't. Sometimes I have guests, sometimes not, and this is where I think best, this is where I work best. I may go up in the mountains somewhere, hike off. I'll play a little tennis or golf, something like that, with some friends. That's kind of relaxing.
Were you always very relaxed? Didn't you at one stage use transcendental meditation to relax? Did you find that was
Well, that's
necessary?
just a personal tool that a lot of people use to relax. That I've always been relaxed on the surface. I'm not necessarily relaxed within. I mean, I'm physically relaxed, but sometimes my mental motor will be going at twice the speed as it appears on the surface, and that sometimes in order to get them both down to the same level, you can sit in meditation, whatever form of meditation is. It might just be sitting out on that rock there watching the sea otters or whatever.
You shy away from the more traditional Hollywood star life. Why is that?
I don't know. I couldn't really tell you. I don't enjoy I'm not a social type person as a rule. I enjoy it occasionally, but not on a regular thing. I live up here where the air is cleaner, and I see movies at the local cinema in town, and I watch them with people who are not involved with the cinema business, and so I see how they react, and I feel I get a better look at what reality is around me, and maybe in the average town across the world.
And most certainly it's this knowledge, this instinct for what the average cinema-goer wants to see, that has brought Eastwood to his present position as one of the most potent filmmakers around. The spaghetti westerns are behind him now, and he won't make another Dirty Harry. So what the future holds could be interesting.
He doesn't really need much of anything. He could, if everything failed him today and he had to go back to digging swimming pools as he was doing 25 years ago, he could do it with very little problems. He would not have to make any major adjustments in his own personal philosophy. He could do it.
One reviews him in terms of what he does on the screen. I know very, very little about him beyond that. And what comes across on the screen is a man with a very narrow range of emotions. Now, the Clint Eastwood off the screen may be a very affable man. In fact, the laugh lines on his face, which make him resemble Shirley MacLaine at times, suggest that he's probably a very genial person.
He's got that indefinable something that is the best in America, I think. We sort of look up to him. He's clean cut. He's strong, he's resolute, he's honest. I don't mean to be, saccharine about it, fatuous about it, but he's a kind of chap that certainly at my age, I'd like my son to turn out like Clint.
I have, alas, never met him, should greatly like to meet him and see where he diverges from this solitary figure riding a quiet horse, which one sees on the screen. One does equate the actor with the people he plays. More in the cinema, I suppose, than in any other art, because in the cinema, the range is limited by popular demand. If Clint Eastwood wanted to play Hamlet, I think that the cinema public would be extremely indignant, you see. They like seeing him. I do too. They like seeing him as this solitary creature, this avenging figure, or this becoming a romantic figure.
Clint's face has developed a kind of torment and a torture that he didn't have, shall we say, 10 years ago when he was simply a golden boy. There's a strain in his face now that is absolutely fascinating.
You have to just keep grinding until the talent, the hard work, the effort to learn, and the good luck all come together at one time. And when they do, then you're all right.
I tell you my dream, and while you're listening to me, I suddenly see it come true.
What did you say your name was again?
I didn't.